Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're going to wait another moment till we're at the bottom of the hour before we start, but we are excited you're here.
Mm-hmm.
Terry, I see you're on. All right, I'm just about ready to begin. Okay, so Ashley, it's 2:30. Let's jump in and get started.
Sounds like a plan.
So welcome, everybody, to our first call of the California Network of Local Government Public Engagement Staffers. We are going to start with a little housekeeping. Hopefully, you can see on the right side of your screen your GoToMeeting box. If you want, you can type in any kind of questions. Hannah, is there anything else I should be saying?
Yes, hi, this is Hannah. So on the right-hand side of your window, there should be a box, a little box. If you do not see it, you have to click on the little orange button, arrow to the left, and then your little box is gonna pop up. You're gonna see the audio, and you're also gonna see questions. Now the questions, it's a little drop-down menu, so if you don't see the question box right now, you need to click on questions little drop-down arrow, and the little window pops up. That's where you're gonna type all the questions or type any answers when we ask you for some reflections, and we'll read them. As well, we will respond to your questions individually during this webinar and after.
So one other thing I could say is if that isn't working for you, you could text me, and then we can try to give you some individual help. My cell number, if anyone wants to text, is 916-588-6671. 916-588-6671. All right. So I'm Sarah Rubin. I am the Public Engagement Program Director at the Institute for Local Government. Ashley?
I muted myself so we didn't get feedback, so I'm back now. I am Ashley Trim. I am the Executive Director at the Davenport Institute for Public Engagement here at the Pepperdine School of Public Policy.
All right. Here we go. Here is our agenda. We are starting with some introductions. We will do some instant polling in a moment. Then we are going to be talking about how we might support you all as a network. We have plenty of time set aside for open Q&A, and then if time allows, we're going to share some resources that we hope you will find helpful, and you'll have them through the webinar PowerPoint if we do run out of time.
And just as another note, for the purposes of this webinar, we are going to keep people on mute. We'll be talking about some options where we might be able to get together where people can actually talk face-to-face. But we will be, as Hannah said, reading the questions that are typed in. So there will still be an opportunity for you to participate. It just seemed easier to kind of navigate that via text for this first conversation.
Yeah. And one of the things we'll talk about is if this really is even the right GoToMeeting is even the right platform for this group versus, for example, something like Zoom. So those are all things we will talk about. So just some quick shout outs for folks who at least RSVP'd from San Pablo, Menlo Park, Morgan Hill, Grand Terrace, San Diego County, Los Angeles, Elk Grove, Dana Point, Roseville, Ventura County, Palo Alto, let's see where else. Oakland, Temecula, Antioch, Shasta, Santa Cruz, Oxnard, Union City, Costa Mesa. We've got folks from all over the state. We are absolutely thrilled to have you. We are going to talk a little bit about our two organizations, and then we're going to jump in. Ashley, go ahead.
Yes, I'm going to keep this really brief. Hearing the name of the cities, I'm guessing that a lot of you already know me and know about the Davenport Institute. So the mission of the Davenport Institute is to help build stronger communities in California by promoting public participation in local governance. And we do that really by working with local governments. We provide training, consultation, and general support for public engagement. And we will talk a little bit more about some of our specific programming toward the end of this webinar. But for the last decade, we've really been focused on supporting local government, mostly on the staff side, but electeds as well in their public engagement efforts.
And for those of you who are not familiar with the Institute for Local Government, we are the research and education nonprofit of the League of California Cities, the California State Association of Counties, and the California Special Districts Association. Our mission is to provide practical, easy-to-use resources to you all. And if you aren't familiar, we have 5 different program areas. A lot of folks know our sustainability work and the Beacon program. Others have had ethics training through ILG. And then, as I mentioned before, I lead our public engagement program. All right, so we are going to dive right into our initial polling questions so we can learn a little bit more about you all. And Hannah is going to help us. So here is our first question, and Hannah is going to open the poll. The poll is open. So basically with this GoToWebinar, we have a limited number of choices. And so for those of you who work in the northern part of the state, we are curious where you are from. North Coast, Shasta Cascades, Gold Country, Sierra, Sacramento Valley, or some other part of Northern California. And for those of you who are from other parts of the state, we're going to be asking you about your location in just a moment. All right. Have folks voted? Do we have our results? Results are on the screen. Oh, good. All right. 21% of you are who responded are from the North Coast, 21% Gold Country, Sierra, and 21% Sacramento Valley, and 36% of you are from some other part of Northern California. Great. Okay, so those of you who are in the central part of the state, we just divided our state up into 3 kind of big swaths for the purpose of these questions.
And then subdivided them into completely arbitrary categories for the sake of these questions.
Exactly. So if you're in the Central Valley, the Bay Area, the Central Coast, or some other part of Central California, we're curious where you are from. All right. Oh, 77% of respondents from the Bay Area, 23% from the Central Coast.
We need some Central Valley representation.
No, we'll have to work on that. All right, our next question, for those of you who are in the southern part of our state, LA, Orange County, Inland Empire, Imperial Valley, San Diego. Okay, 29% of respondents are from LA, 21% Orange County, 50% Inland Empire. All right, and Imperial and San Diego, no one. Another thing we have to work on, Ashley.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead to the next. Is there another question? Yeah, as we get to this, if you are from somewhere else, if you were from either one of the other places in Northern California or somewhere that you feel like was entirely not captured by our categories, please type that in the questions just so we have a record of who else is around. But then let's go ahead and keep moving.
Great. So now we're curious if you work at a city, county, special district, or another entity, like a university or a nonprofit.
Or a COG.
Or a COG, or a state agency, or another regional agency.
The White House. Oh, wait.
Okay, interesting. So 63% of you are from cities, 16% counties, 11% special districts, and 11% other. Yeah, interesting. All right. So now we are curious, if you don't mind typing in within the question feature or the chat feature, either one that's easy for you to type into, what is the name of the department you work in? Planning, Public Affairs, City Manager's Office, City Clerk, Community Development, City Manager, Public Information, more City Manager.
County's Executive Office, Public Information, Police Department, Administration, Public Works, Community Engagement Office, Community Choice Aggregation Organization, Community Development, City Manager.
Very interesting. Thank you. All right, we've just got a couple more questions. All right, here is our next one. So, and this, we just really want you to guess. How much of your job involves public engagement? And we really are looking for your actual, day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month job, not necessarily what's in your job description. One of the things we find is that the percentage of time it takes to do public engagement work often isn't reflected within someone's job description.
And sometimes someone ends up getting tasked with public engagement without it being in their job description at all.
That is very true. So just do your best guess. Okay.
Oh, big range there. Great.
Very interesting. 11%, 0 to 10, 19%, 11 to 25%, 27% of you are doing this work 26 to 50% of your time, 27% of you are doing it 50 to 75%, and 16% are almost full time. That's super interesting. Okay, here is our final question for the moment. Is there a discrepancy between how much time it takes you to plan and execute your public engagement work and how much time is allocated within your job description? All right. Wow, okay. I guess, I don't know, Ashley, those results are pretty much what I expected. 27% of you strongly agree there's a discrepancy. 36% agree there's a discrepancy. 12% undecided. 21% not much. And as I expect, 3% no discrepancy.
Probably one person's job description matches their work exactly. Yeah, I think that is expected, but good to know. Good to know that some places are getting close to getting allocations right, but a lot of places there's a divergence there.
So Ashley, I know we talked about me talking a little bit about this slide, but I've been talking so much. Do you want to start us off and I'll add in?
Absolutely. So interesting in getting the feedback from those questions because it really reflects why we're here. Both Sarah and I have the opportunity to work with people all across the state who are doing different types of public engagement. And one of the things that we realized as we were talking is a lot of people come from a variety of backgrounds. You know, when we're doing training or when we're doing technical support or coaching, we're not working with people who all have the same job title. They're coming from a bunch of departments, which was reflected in the question that we asked. They have a bunch of different job titles. It's not always a clear match with their job description. Sometimes it is, but oftentimes it's, you know, one of many tasks, which can make it a lot harder to know who should you be connecting with to talk about who's doing public engagement. You know, if you're a public information officer, you connect with other public information officers. If you're a planner and you're part of APA, you go to APA conferences and you figure out the planning. But if you're doing engagement specifically, you may be working across multiple departments. It may be part of a much broader job description, and it may be difficult to know who else in local government, in cities, counties, special districts, or places that serve local governments, who's doing this work. So one of the things that we realized as we were having these conversations is we were meeting really smart people all across the state who were committed to trying to make their public engagement work and work well, and who didn't know who else in their same state was working on the same problem or same challenges. So we saw an opportunity for us to be able to reach out through our networks, through the diversity of people that we've encountered, and really start convening a conversation. We are both small organizations. I am a fully employed staff of 1.5 people, and Sarah is, I think, at 2. So we are not really able to create a fully staffed, you know, this isn't going to be Capio tomorrow, but we do want to be able to convene a conversation, help introduce people to each other, and then really open it up to you to say, what do you want this to be? Is this something that, hey, it would be great to connect with people. Can you host a phone call once a year? Or is it something much more in depth than that and you're willing to take some ownership of that? But we wanted to start by just bringing people together.
Right.
So, yes, great. So as we were thinking through it, we know that opening a conversation, especially on chat, you know, 50 people who are in a room together and saying, what do you want to do, can be a little overwhelming. So we started out by thinking of ways that we can support this network. And we see an opportunity for ILG and the Davenport Institute to serve as a collector or compiler of contact information. Again, reaching across departments, hopefully connecting you with people that you might not otherwise know were in this field. There's a couple options we can do with that. It might be something as simple as, here's a Google document that you can keep yourselves updated on. We'll moderate it, make sure that it's, you know, somewhat relevant to everyone's work. And when you're looking for someone in your general area, you can go onto that document and reach out directly to them. It might be a little bit more formal. It would be easy for us to set up a listserv where we could send, or where participants, not Sarah and I, but where participants participants of the network would be able to send out an email saying, hey, I'm working on this issue. Does anyone have experience working on public engagement around a budget? Or does anyone have experience working on public engagement around the design of a fountain, whatever it ends up looking like? And then the other thing that we can do as a collector of information is to champion the network in our other work. I know just from Sarah reading off some of the cities that are participating in this call, it sounds like at least a few people on the call were participants in our professional certificate in public engagement back in January, and others connected to this either through our newsletter, through Sarah's newsletter, through some of the trainings that ILG has done lately. And that's something we can continue to do to help keep growing the connections between people. Moving into some stuff that's a little more formal, I think there's an opportunity for ILG and the Davenport Institute to be a convener of conversations. And as Sarah mentioned, we've talked about, well, what's the platform for that? It might be a Google Hangout that we are able to schedule and let you guys know about once a month, and you jump on and everyone has a chance to talk. It might be by providing the technical support for webinars, or it might be by providing some administrative support for convening in-person meetings. Limitations to that, again, being a staff of 1.5 and 2, is that the content for any of those things would really be up to the network. So if you wanted to do a Google Hangout and just figure out who else is in the field, that's great, we can set it up for you. If you want to do a webinar, you need to help us come up with topics that you're curious about, or areas that you want. We can't really come, we're not really at a point where we have the capacity to do programming in that sense. We would be able to help connect you with experts in different fields. And wait, there was one more before we go on there.
Sorry.
Oh, and then the other were things, you know, if you get really ambitious and you all want to have a blog, the Pepperdine has a really useful blogging platform. But again, I don't have the time to write blog posts, so that would be things that you guys get to share. Or we could set up social media groups. So I'm sure there's other options as well, but those are some of the, again, with us being able to be kind of a host and a convener without necessarily being the programmer of the content for that. Although again, because Sarah and I both have expertise in this area, we'd be happy if you say, we really want someone who can speak to this, we can do some matchmaking, I think, as well. All right, so on to the next slide. Yeah, so then the question of what the network is going to look like, that is really up to you. Is this something you're interested in that you want to run with? Do you want to make it formal? At some point, should there be some kind of a leadership subgroup or a board? You know, you can make it that formal. That I'm guessing Sarah and I have both been involved in similar networks among the public engagement field, and it tends to, the question of how formal you get tends to come up later. I think initially it can be really helpful to just know who's at the table. And then we thought of some things that would be really easy first steps. And one thing we definitely want to get before we get off the call is permission from people to share contact information. And I think the way that we will handle that is, if you don't want us to share your contact information, please let us know that way. Otherwise, we will assume that you wanted to be part of a network. You don't mind if we share your contact information with the rest of the network. So again, anyone who's running from the cops, let us know. We won't share your contact info. And then another option for an easy first step would be to set up something that's a little bit more deliberative, something like a Google Hangout, where we're not doing everything via text, but where participants would be able to actually hear from each other. And it would be much less led by Sarah and I, and much more something that you would have an opportunity to talk to each other and hear each other's voices. And then I think another question that's on the table is, where might this go? So things might come up in the questions that are obviously not things we can do today or tomorrow, but that it would be like, wow, it would be awesome if, you know, in a year or two we had the opportunity to do a statewide conference for public engagement officials, that's probably a bit further down the road. But we'd still be interested in hearing if that's something people are interested in. So,
all right.
Where are we at? Okay. Yeah, so Sarah, I'm going to turn it back over to you to moderate because I can't see things.
Okay. So this is a moment where we're working with this relatively constrained format. If folks don't mind using the question or the chat box to share your initial thoughts or reactions, we will read them back so everybody can hear.
And questions, and we can try to answer questions as well.
Yes, so there's 48 folks. I'm sure you can all see the attendees number. There's 48 folks who are participating in the moment, and we'd love to hear from as many of you as want to share.
So we have one comment from David Murray right now, who is suggesting that perhaps the listserv would be a good starting point. Also, David suggesting that travel and public engagement symposium would be interesting. We have a comment from John, again, about the listserv or social media, such as LinkedIn group, would be helpful. Matchmaking would also be very valuable. Hi, Maureen, we have a comment from you, a listserv again.
Wait, let me ask a clarifying question for the person who wrote matchmaking. Do you mean matchmaking amongst other local government public engagement staffers who, for example, are working on public engagement and budgeting, or did you mean potentially between consultants or other resources? Just curious if you want to follow up. Go ahead.
And as you type in the answer, David, okay, so we have people seconding the listserv. Okay. And definitely you guys would like to get a list of who's on this call. And again, the listserv, looks like listserv is really good.
Good.
Everyone's supporting that.
Right. And again, just to note, we can set up the listserv. We can send out an initial email that says, hey guys, here's the listserv. And then that gives an opportunity to really open it up to everyone else. I don't anticipate necessarily sending weekly updates or anything through the listserv from my end, although I'm sure I'm trying to promote things. I will actually send it through the listserv. But that would then become a tool that everyone could use for your own questions and information.
Well, within the context of sharing everyone who's on the call, you could either email us if you don't want your name shared, or you could even include it in one of these chat or question boxes, whatever is easy.
Yeah, and Hannah doesn't have to tell everyone which people don't want their names shared.
No, we won't repeat that. We won't put you on the spot.
Folks are suggesting with the listservs also perhaps sharing people's experience in the field, and so what do they do actually. Some people are suggesting regional meetings, gatherings to meet each other. And people are saying that connecting to each other in the same sector, such as public works, would be a great idea. I apologize, I need to step off for another conference call. Thank you, Alexia. And again, you guys are liking the idea of connecting communities that are working on the similar initiatives to share best practices.
So yes, it's validating a number of things that we wondered about for this call, including the idea of maybe on these kinds of calls we could pick 3 or 4 people who could give us a 3 or 4 minute little vignette of what they're working on and what their challenges are. That way people can get to know what other people are doing in the field.
And Sarah, we have one question that perhaps some people on the phone are wondering about. From Christine, she's asking, what is the difference between communications, public information officers, and public engagement?
That's a great question. You want me to start, Ashley? You want to start?
You start. Take it, and then I'll jump in.
So I don't know how familiar folks who are participating are with the IAP2 public engagement spectrum. If you aren't, maybe we could email out an image of the spectrum, or you could easily Google it. But the IEP2 spectrum I think of as a nice tool to think about engagement kind of from a left to the right, where left is more information out, and as you move to the right of that scale, it's really about deliberative, collaborative decision making. So I think of communications or public information officer work as even to the left of that scale, in that a traditional PIO person is really about communicating out, getting the message out to the community that the agency wants to share. Now, where a communication person versus a public engagement person's work overlaps is probably subjective depending on where that person works and what they do. But to me, the big difference is where you are looking for engagement from people in the community, the residents in your community, getting their feedback, authentically wanting their feedback, versus just pushing information out.
Yeah, and I would just add to that certainly in many cities, the public information officer does take on a much more engaged role. So in no way are we suggesting that, oh, you're a public information officer, you're not an engaged person. But recognizing that a lot of the types of support that you would be receiving from CAPIO and other places are really focused on the messaging and communications side of things. And while that's important for informing public engagement, I think what's missing as a resource is really connecting to the other people that are saying, hey, we're trying to convene a public conversation. We have 2 really active groups in our community that always show up. How do we get to other people? Or how do we get other people in the room? Or how do we set up our process so that one voice can't dominate it? I know both Sarah and I do a lot of work on process design to help people who are trying to convene conversations design processes that encourage people to talk to each other and to discuss trade-offs amongst residents, not just with residents kind of petitioning the government. So I think that I would just echo what Sarah says, but with the caveat that there are a lot of public information officers who may also be doing engagement. So the distinction is one of which part of your job are we talking about, not necessarily saying, oh, public information officer is not an appropriate person to be doing this. I think in a very engaged city, we would hope that the public information officer would be very involved in public engagement.
Absolutely.
In our experience, that's not always the case.
Yes, and public information officers have incredibly important jobs.
Right.
This isn't any good, bad. It's just
right.
Trying to make distinctions.
And identify gaps, right? Because there are great resources out there. Like I said, same thing for planners. We're hoping the Davenport Institute certainly does a lot of work with planning departments, but we're not the new PA by any stretch of the imagination. We're focused with how do planning departments work on engagement? How does PIO work on engagement?
Yeah.
How does redevelopment, well, there isn't redevelopment anymore, but how does economic development work on public engagement?
Hannah, any other comments or questions you want to share?
Yes, so it looks like we have definitely consensus of people wanted to share information with each other and having some type of listservs, potential entertaining idea of having some type of meetings or perhaps joining existing regional meetings such as COG meetings. And people are curious about sharing information about the projects that other folks are working on and see if there's some similarity in public engagement projects.
That'd be fun.
That idea of joining with existing meetings is a great idea too. It might be something where we connect with some of the regional conferences and have a happy hour or something fun that we have an opportunity to really intentionally convene together and get to know who's doing this work. I think that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look like David responded to us about the matchmaking, but one of the persons second idea.
Great.
All right. Well, should we share a little information about resources and then we can always do more Q&A?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. And definitely with the takeaway that for those of you who are on the call, be expecting to hear from us about getting at least the contact information in the listserv going sooner than later. So cool.
All right. So here's a few things you all might find interesting. Why don't we just go back and forth, Ashley? Next month, here in Sacramento, ILG is putting on a big 2-day training in our TIERS public engagement framework. If you haven't heard of TIERS yet, it stands for Think, Initiate, Engage, Review, and Shift. And we're happy to give you more information if you're interested.
Mm-hmm. And we have 2 events coming up a little bit later, one in April 28th, 6th through 27th. I read that as 28th through 27th, and I was like, wait, that doesn't make sense. April 26th through 27th, it's on my calendar. We have the opportunity to host with the International Association of Public Participation and the Participation Company, a 2-day long session on strategies for dealing with opposition and outrage in public participation. We are not doing the training. The Participation Company is doing the training. It is eligible for some, it's not continuing education, there's a name for it, but some credit through APA, but is really geared toward anyone who's dealing with opposition and outrage. That's an area that I need to hone my skills, so I will be there attending that one, but it will be hosted at the Pepperdine West LA campus. And then we just confirmed our dates for our next professional certificate in advanced public engagement. Will be June 8th through 10th here in Malibu. Like I said, I think some of the people on the call here were at our last one, so help spreading the word that it's coming up again. And anyone who has not had a chance to look into that, would encourage you to check us out. It's a fun program and a good deep dive into some of the skills we've been talking about already here.
And then in the fall, we're close to setting some dates. I think they're going to be in October. We're going to be holding a 2-day facilitation skills training with Mary Galinas, who many of you might know. She had a book come out last year, or maybe the year before, called Talk Matters. So as soon as we have those dates, we'll be spreading the word if anyone's interested in facilitation skills training.
That'll be a great training. We're having her down to speak to our Masters of Public Policy students in a couple weeks. So.
Oh, fun. That's great.
Sarah, I wonder if we can go back to one slide and perhaps give folks a little brief overview what people will get out of this training. There's so many different opportunities. So is one training like more useful or better than other? And is it one training for beginners who just started public engagement, just starting in the field, or advanced professionals?
Sure.
These are good questions. Well, I think all the training ILG and Davenport offer are great. Well, why don't I just say a little bit about the TIERS training, and then you could add on, Hannah. So the TIERS training is something where we train agencies in teams, because one of the things that we have found is that, for better or worse, when 1 or 2 people go to a training and then they get back to their desk, it can be hard for them to implement, or it can be hard for them to feel like there's that cultural shift within their department that supports them to really be trying some things that if that agency might feel a little edgy or innovative. So right now, the way we're doing our TIERS training is a city, county, or special district can send up to 5 people to participate. And your skill level can really be from, like, I don't even know what the phrase public engagement means, to, for example, I'm thinking of Karen Watkins from the County of San Bernardino, who I really think of as a leader in the field. And she participated in our Inland Empire training last year and loved it. So does that help answer your question? Anything you'd add?
That's pretty much it. I was just curious. For folks who just started in the field, which training position?
One other thing I would add is that some people say they really like about the TIERS training is that we work with the agency on one specific project area whether that's a general plan, a specific plan, or if you're dealing with homelessness, where throughout the 2 days you work through some templates and you come out on the other side really with a blueprint that you can run with for your engagement effort, whether it's a 1 month or 6 week or more than year-long effort that you have ahead of you. Ashley, anything you want to share about your guys' certificate?
Yeah. So quickly on the EOP, that the opposition and outrage one, that's a very specific training. I have not been through it before, but it's really developed to talk about when you're dealing with very contentious issues or with very divided communities. So I think it's a timely time to offer that, but I have not been through before, so I have to admit to this feels really important, but I can't give a ton of details to that. The professional certificate program, on the other hand, I designed, so I know a little bit about that one. And it is really designed to be a deep dive into public engagement for people who are tasked with public engagement, who are perhaps in a position where they're needing to function as a champion of public engagement within their organization for specific issues. And we've designed it to be a combination of learning from experts, but also peer learning and workshopping. So we have participants come with a project that they're either currently working on or with something that they think would be good to do public engagement around, but maybe they haven't really been able to take that step yet. But they bring an issue to the table. It's a 2.5 day long training session. And we start with jumping in with the question of why is public engagement important right now? And we're assuming that people who are coming have some sense that it is important. And from participants in past sessions, what I've heard from them is that initial session really helps them have the framework and the story to tell within their own organization to other people to say, this is why it's important that we're doing this. And then we talk about getting engagement right from the start, which is starting to set up what do you need to be looking at internally and externally before you ever really design your engagement process to know that you're ready and to know that this is going to be sustainable. And how do you start creating a plan? We have an opportunity to hear from some practitioners on what leading edge techniques for public engagement are across a variety of issues, including both process-based techniques for convening conversations as well as ways of building capacity for engagement. We bring in some speakers to speak about engaging traditionally marginalized or underrepresented communities, and we have a workshop around how to really reach out to those groups. We talk about the role of technology in public engagement and try to provide a framework for you to know, should you be doing something online? If so, what? How do you match the right platform to the purpose of engagement? And then we have a half-day long workshop that gets a little bit into facilitation. So it looks at facilitating conversations in public meetings. And then there's an opportunity for people to, again, workshop their own challenges within that framework. And hopefully they have a chance to present those and to hear feedback, and then hopefully to go home with really the beginnings of a work plan. So it's kind of a working weekend where people go home feeling equipped and ready, both knowing internally what needs to happen and ready to take the first steps externally. So unlike the tiers training, it's really focused on preparing individual leaders in public engagement that hopefully then can go back and be champions of public engagement within their own organizations. It is a professional certificate offered through Pepperdine University, so you get the nice, pretty little certificate from Pepperdine University, and it's in Malibu, which is not terrible. So I think that would be
exciting than Sacramento. We'll give you that.
But Sacramento, the seat of California government and all that jazz. So yeah, so I think there's a little bit of a different focus in terms of preparing you as the individual to be an engaged leader versus taking a team and really helping them work through a specific project the way that Tiers does.
great. And we have one comment from Nancy Stevenson, who is saying, Mary Gavlinas is fantastic. We had a 2-day training with her here.
That's great.
Yeah.
Pass that on. I'm sure Mary would be excited to hear that. All right. So we just want to make sure that everyone who's participating is aware of a couple organizations that have lots of resources available that you might find interesting. One is NCDD, the other is IAP2, which we have mentioned a number of times. NCDD has a conference every other year. Their conference is this fall. Is it in Denver? Do you guys remember? I think it's in Denver. Does that sound right, Ashley?
Right.
It's my favorite conference. I love going to the NCDD conference. IAP2's conference just happened, I think, didn't it?
No, it's coming up as well.
Oh, it's coming up. Okay. So check out those websites.
IAP2's conference is actually, even though it's IAP2 USA, it's actually in Canada because it's IAP2 North America. So it's in Victoria, British Columbia in June. I don't remember when it is, but it's coming up.
So check those out. And we thought we'd share just a little bit more about some of our resources. You want to go over these, Ashley?
Sure. So the Davenport Institute, and those of you who are familiar with us have probably heard this little spiel before, so I'll go briefly through it. We have the how are we doing platform, and this is really, it's 20 questions. It's on our website. You can email me for a PDF version of it, or you can fill it out on our website. And it's a self-evaluation of how prepared your agency is to start doing public engagement. So it'll ask things like, is public engagement part of someone's job description? Have people been trained in public engagement? Different things like that that help you to understand what other governments are doing to get ready for engagement, and then know maybe where your gaps are. So it can function in 2 ways. One is to identify gaps. We encourage people to go ahead and fill out the application. So you can be recognized if you look at this and you're like, wow, we are doing all of these. We're the most engaged city ever. You can fill it out, and we recognize cities at the gold, silver, and platinum level to give kudos to those cities that are really have made public engagement a priority. But what we've found is actually we've given the award to a total of 3 cities at this point. So what we found, most cities in California actually are is in using this is to go on, do the self-evaluation, sometimes even fill it out online. We're not going to send it to the media or anything, but if you fill it out and we get your information, then we're able to say, hey, it looks like you're doing great in this spot and this spot. Here are some resources that might help you move forward. So it can be a good starting point for people who know they want to up their public engagement game, but are maybe sitting there going, I don't know how we measure up. I don't know whether we're doing a good job or not. I don't know what other cities are doing. Our key programs are our half-day trainings. We offer 2 half-day trainings, one on public engagement and one on government 2.0, specifically looking at technology and the relationship between technology and engagement. And both of those trainings we offer to cities, either individual cities will host it. I'm heading up to Paso Robles tomorrow to do one of our half-day trainings. Or partnerships of cities. You know, if you're a small city, maybe there's 3 cities in the area. They're very affordable. We will get as many people into the room from as many departments. And the goal of those trainings is really to give people a common framework and understanding of what public engagement is when you do it. What do we all mean when we're talking about this? So that's really designed for as many people from an agency as possible. I've already talked about the professional certificate in advanced public engagement. And then we provide technical support, as does ILG. So we will provide advice. I do a lot of phone calls with people. If you're just like, hey, I'm thinking about this and I don't know where to start, you can call me and I will talk to you and either answer your questions or direct you to people who can answer your questions. And then we do some consultation and facilitation as well. But again, we're 1.5 people. So in doing that, we also have a number of partners around the state that we can help match you with if we're not able to take the time. So Sarah, you want to talk about ILG's?
Thank you. So we mentioned the tiers framework a few moments ago. Similar to some of the components that Ashley talked about with their certificate. Obviously, this work is so there's a lot of similarities in that within this framework and within our learning lab, we are helping people to figure out what are the right activities, tactics that they want to use both for in-person efforts and for your digital efforts. We have a big piece on how to get beyond the usuals, how to connect with those from different ethnic communities, how to build relationships with ethnic media, how to deal with really strong emotions, grandstanders. We also do a mini facilitation piece where people do some role playing, which is very fun. And then the evaluation piece. How do you know, how do you evaluate your work? Think about how you're improving your systems as you go. And then another piece where we actually do some anonymous instant polling on our smartphones because it is so sensitive. We definitely spend a good amount of time talking about internal organizational challenges. What factors prevent us from getting to do this work in the deep, authentic way we want to? And then what are workarounds, you know, for overcoming those barriers? And in that way, we also do a lot of peer-to-peer sharing. Because most people have had all these different challenges. So here are just some images. We have all kinds of resources online, just like the Davenport Institute does. We have 100 case stories available online, so you can check out what different communities have done. We've been collecting those since the beginning of the program, which is more than 10 years ago now. We have robust materials around immigrant engagement and integration. About 30% of our programmatic time is spent on immigrant engagement efforts. About another 30% of our time is spent with folks we have contracts with, and some of those are here. This coming Monday, we're doing an exciting dialogue event with the city of Roseville that I'm leading. So check out our materials, and just as Ashley said, we also do technical assistance and coaching, and that can be in person or by phone. So we've got a little more time for any Q&A if anybody has any other questions or comments before we wrap up.
And now you have our contact information if you want to call us and ask all your questions, since we both just said we do that.
Yeah. All right. Well, one other thing I'll mention before we close, because I'm super excited about it, it's just happened today, is we created a case story video about some really inspiring work the city of Lodi has done that specifically has involved youth from specifically one leader from a challenged background, and that's just up on our website, and we're starting to promote it today. So City of Lodi video, share it if you like it.
Great. That's exciting.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, guys. We will definitely take the information that we've heard and the contact information we've received, as well as I know a couple emails have come in as I've been sitting here saying, hey, I wanted to be on the call and I wasn't able to make it. So we will let you know about next steps, which will definitely include some opportunities for you to get connected via email. And then we'll keep brainstorming with you about how we can get this moving. I think if we start with a network of 42 people, we're starting out strong. So
yeah,
this is great.
And there's 200 people on our larger list who all couldn't necessarily participate today that Hannah worked so hard and Sarah Axon worked so hard to build. And if you know of anybody else who does this kind of work, any other colleagues, and you want to suggest for them to get added on the list, please go forward and do that.
Yes, so you can just email us and we'll add the person to the email list. And you're asking about the slides, if the slides will be available. The question is yes, we will follow up with emails that will include slides, next steps, this type of information.
Great. All right,
thanks everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good day.
All right, bye.